Hey Weavers, this is Deborah from yarnnovations.com, and today I want to dip our toes a little bit into the tapestry weaving realm with our rag rugs as we twine. I'm going to start and use this rug as an example. Let me show you a whole picture of that. I want to talk about the steps that I did to make this, just kind of through each part, and then afterward I'll kind of make a demonstration of parts of it so you can see what I mean after I've talked through it all. First, when I make a project, I like to draw out different possibilities. So I actually really just did these three at the beginning, and then I started my rug, and then I didn't like how things were working out, so I'm like, well, what if I do this or this or this? So I like to draw it out, but as I wove, it kind of changed and adapted as I went along. So I just want to talk through this rug in particular. I started with counter twining at the beginning, so I was always twisting over, working right and left, and I put a white warp because I knew I was going to start with white, and I didn't want it to be visible. So I kind of mathematically calculated it out and thought, well, I have 38 inches of length, so how much do I want of each color? So I set my loom to 38 by 28 inches, and then after it was washed, it shrunk just a little bit to 36 3/4 by 25.5 inches. And that's really about the size that I wanted in the end anyway. So I did 2 inches. 2 inches was kind of my number throughout. 2 inches for white. And then 3 rows I did for all of the color transitions, like the deeper colors. So I just did 3 rows of that. And then I knew I wanted 2 inches to here. Now I didn't actually do all 2 inches because I thought it might be difficult to squeeze in this dark green row. So I actually twined just a little bit of blue. And then I did this light green. What I was really going for was a moving, flowing part of the rug, but I didn't want to have to change colors like the dovetail join or whatever. I didn't want to have to weave here and then change the dark green, and then change the light green, and then come back and change the dark green, and then change the light blue. I wanted to be able to insert an item, a shape, and then weave around that, and then have rows that would follow that so that I would naturally have a curve that I didn't have to create by changing colors. Do you see what I mean there? Okay, so I did I did just a little bit of blue, wove this green, light green section, and then afterward I wove around that in the dark green. And then I wove the rest of the light blue to here. Now that'll get me right here. I had to do little short rows of light blue here, and then short rows of light blue to here. So then that's where I kind of stopped. And then when I came back here, I could go follow along the whole length of this green. So that's how I got this motion without having to change colors all the time. And once that line was established, I could just follow that for the dark blue, 3 rows. And then I didn't quite do 2 inches, I just wove till I thought I was done with this purple. And then 3 rows of this dark red, and then just a little bit of the red, because I then stopped and then jumped down to this yellow. Now the yellow, I did something a little bit different. I wasn't quite sure where the center was, and I didn't want to start here and have to push the whole thing down or push the whole thing up. So I actually found the center of my rug and wove this center line first, and then wove up. And then went back to the center and wove down, and then did dark yellow around it. And then because I knew I was going to do orange next, I went ahead and did the dark orange around that. Okay? And then I decided I was going to finish this orange section and then do this dark red so that I could kind of finish this red, because I knew I was going to have this extra red section here. So I probably worked down to maybe the light blue or the dark blue, and then I turned it over and did the other side to match. So I did work toward the center, but I'm just telling you, I kind of worked a section here. Now I chose a leaf shape, and I chose this kind of eye shape because I knew that the motion would go around it and I could twine naturally around it and I wouldn't have any funny drop-off sections. If I had done a complete circle, I think twining around it to this straight side would have been awkward. And I think if I had done 3 rows around it, it wouldn't necessarily have looked as nice. So I intentionally chose an arched shape so that I didn't have any funny twinings coming down here. Because if it, say I had done a square or a rectangle or a straight side, then I would have felt like I had to do the dovetail join or the clasp weft join in order to meet it. So this is a good, this type of tapestry weaving is good if you do a triangle or a curved section like this. Okay, so I'm going to take a look at how I actually did that. So remember, I did my white section and my blue, and then I just did a little bit of a light blue. Then I introduced the green. So I'm going to take this green and I'm going to fold it in half. And I'm just going to start somewhere. I'm not going to worry about, oh, is it 2 inches just quite yet. I'm sorry, I'm not going to start there. I actually started a few rows in, a few warp strands in, because it was arched. If I start over on the side, how do I get it to go up? So I started up here at the top, and I believe I did about 3 warp strands. Now this first row is fiddly and the warp strands move, and it's kind of awkward. But once you get about 2 or 3 rows in, then it's pretty solid and you don't have to worry as much. Okay, so I did 3. I made sure my warp strands weren't getting too out of shape, and I kind of tried to crunch them down, make sure I didn't have them too loose. All right, and then I just decided I went 1 strand further on the left. So that's 1 strand. I'm going to turn as if it's the end of the project, and then weave back. On this side, I believe I did 2 and sometimes 3 strands. And I'm going to pretend that's the end, and I'm going to weave back. All right, now you can see here that this is really tight, so I really did work hard at the very beginning to make sure that I had I wasn't bending my warp strands way out of whack. Okay, so that's why I said the first rows are especially fiddly. You can't like push these rows up against previous work. You're just kind of floating there. Pretend that's the end. Okay. Once you have about 3 rows, then you can start pushing up against them. And right now, say I started this project and that's not exactly where I want. It's okay to start your shape, and then if you want to move it up, like I was going to weave down to it. But if you knew that's where it was going to be, you could just start weaving it there, or push it up to there. Because I knew it was going to get bigger or stronger, longer on the sides, that's fine. You could also start a shape right there. But I knew I wanted to weave dark green around it. You know what I'm saying? If I wasn't going to do dark green around it, then I would probably just start and do my whole shape, and then come back and fill in with my other color. I want to do dark green around it because I wanted it to flow naturally around it. So I'm going to leave some space. So my point was, while you have about 3 rows, you can still push it and move it where you wanted. I had put some marker lines on my warp strand, so I knew, oh, I want the top to be here. So as I was packing it, if it moved out of where I wanted, then I would just kind of push it back down. Now once you get a lot of rows on there, it's harder to move a whole shape. So that's why I say maybe after 3 or 4 rows. Okay. So I'm going to finish weaving this shape and then come back and talk about what I did next, okay? So I went ahead and finished making out a leaf or a symmetrical shape or somewhat symmetrical shape, and it ends with tails right here. I push these tails to the back and I'll weave them in at the very end. Okay. Now if you make a shape like this and then you go ahead and bring your blue down, you're going to have to do dovetail joins to connect it. So right here you would have to do a dovetail join, which is not hard. You can push some of these rows out of the way, and if you're going to share a warp strand, you can do that here and push that up and share it and then push it back in place. Or you can do a clasp weft. You can't do clasp weft because you've already woven this in. So a dovetail join. I didn't want to do a dovetail join, and I wanted it to flow, and that was the whole purpose of this project, was to avoid a dovetail join. So I decided that I was going to outline my shapes so that I wouldn't have to worry about a join here, and I wouldn't have to join here or just anywhere, okay? So then I take my next color, and I actually started right here on the side, and I put halfway through so I don't have a tail to worry about here, and then I just start twining around the shape. And I don't worry about if there's going to be a hole or if the space or whatever. I really pushed it down hard as I wove around, okay? So let's just weave around this shape. It's a little trickier, and you can see I wanted space here so I didn't have to worry about, I didn't want it too close so I didn't have to fight this round. And then every time I got to this point, I would go to the next warp strand. So I had the last of the light green is this strand, so I'm going to just go around one more strand here. I'm going to pretend like that's the end and just do a regular turnaround and then start weaving back here. Okay, and as you saw, by pushing these down, it really kind of got rid of all the holes. You have to be careful here because you can push it out of shape. And it just leaves a really nice, smooth, even line around this project. So I did that 3 times, so I had a nice full line around that. Okay? And the next thing you're going to have to do is to weave down to at least this level. And if you just turn around and go back, you're going to have a little triangle space here that's not filled in. So I'll weave down to here and then do short rows to fill this in, and then start again and then weave to here. Okay, so I'm going to weave down to here. Alright? Alright, so I've woven down to where I can meet the leaf here, and you'll see there's a little pocket that's not filled in here. If I push this whole leaf up here, then I lose this arch. So I need to actually fill that in with blue. This part's not as fun because you're weaving in a really tight space, trying to, it's like the very end of your rug when those last rows are really hard to weave in. But I just do that. I often use some scissors to kind of push them around a warp strand. Now if I think that's the top, then I'll go ahead and get this one and turn back around. And I'll try to finish on 2 strands. So I'll keep weaving, but like this section I would weave quite a bit. But as long as I finish kind of on going around 2 strands, does that make sense? So even after this first round, you can already see that it's kind of closing it in a little bit, right? I'm going to push that up. And then I might do one more set around that one and then kind of be done. And then probably push this up slightly to meet it. Okay? So then the question, then I would go over here and weave until this point. So I'm going to have tails over here, I have tails here, I have tails from the green, doing this kind of tapestry does leave some tails, but I'll introduce another strand right here of the blue, and then I'll keep weaving over in short rows, kind of like what I did over here in this little section. If I want, I can push these a little bit out of the way to make it easier until I get to them. But remember, I pushed it out of the way, or you need to remember if you push it out of the way to push it back. Okay. So these last couple are going to be hard again. I'm going to get my scissors out and probably do this one, and then turn around and come back, and then I'll keep doing these short rows until I get to this point. So I'm going to finish doing those short rows. As you can see, I've kind of filled in this section right here, and I went ahead and filled in a little section right here because I actually wanted the blue to flow straight here and curve right here. So I filled in just a little bit right here. Otherwise, the line would curve around here and then curve back up, and I would have to fill that in somewhere else anyway. Okay, so this is where I left off. I came to this point. I did a dovetail join, like the green is first and then the blue. And then I'm going to turn. I'm going to work my way back. These tails are a little bit longer here. And then when I get to it, I won't have to do any color changes. I'm just going to twine right over it. Like I meant to have a curve there. Or, you know, like when you're just twining straight across. Except for there will naturally be a curve. Now in this demonstration, when the leaf isn't very big, so the curve isn't going to be as dramatic as in the rug I did. Now there's going to be tails here from this little blue section. Now I'm just going to turn and weave back. I did try to carefully not weave too tight at the transition from flat to curve, because those stitches will probably elongate a little bit. As you can see here, you can see that natural curve right here, and you didn't have to change colors to do it. So that's kind of what I did for most of the rug. I'll be honest, I was really trying to make this rug right here, but I didn't make the leaves long enough. I should have gone at least halfway into my rug. So my leaves were too short, so I had all this extra space left in the middle that I had to kind of fill in. So take a look at the rug. I'll just tell you once again. We have the leaf. Once I have the arch established, then I can just do the rest of the colors. The blue would follow the purple, the dark red, and then I did a little bit of light red. And then I saw that I had a bigger distance or space right here than I did between here. So I knew I had to fill something in here. So I started in the middle of the yellow and worked up, middle of the yellow and worked down, then did the dark yellow, the orange. Then I started halfway here. I introduced the light orange here and followed it, and the dark orange and the dark red. And then I went back to the red and filled in all these spaces. So the red, light red followed to about right here, and then I had to do short rows to right here. I hope the yellow now makes more sense after seeing how I did that. So I just stopped here, did the yellow, worked up to here, and then filled in. So I hope that helps you understand a little bit of tapestry weaving using on rag rugs when you're twining. I recommend shapes like triangles and ovals or things with arches so that you don't have a straight side that you're dealing with that you feel like you have to have short rows. You can outline in a new color, you can outline in the same color. This way you won't have to do dovetail joining on these projects. I hope that was clear and understandable. I look forward to seeing your projects. Happy weaving!